Hello, my name is Catalina Murrio Zamora, and I will be presenting a comparison between the scientific paper called Large Influence of Soil Moisture on Long-Term Terrestrial Carbon Uptake, published on the Nature Journal, and an article published on the New York Times that talks about said scientific paper. First of all, we're going to talk about the article presented by the New York Times. It is called As Climate Warms, Plants Will Absorb Less CO2, Study Finds. It was published in the New York Times on January 23, 2019, and this article was written by Kendra Pierre-Louise, and it is based on a study published by the journal Nature. In her article, Pierre-Louise makes a comparison of the CO2 levels between now and a time when dinosaurs were still on Earth. She is trying to explain to the reader how the similar situation may have the same outcome: plants absorbing big amounts of CO2 due to an increase in vegetation. When the author talks about the study, she says that in the future, two different stages might take place: extreme dryness and rainfall. It will be expected to have more vegetation with the increase of CO2. When she explains the experiment, she says that simulations were created to test the possible outcomes. Finally, she talks about the results by saying that due to the extreme dryness experienced before the rainfalls, the amount of CO2 absorbed will not be able to compensate the amount of CO2 produced. She concludes her article by saying that there will be more research on the topic since it was eye-opening for many scientists. Now we can talk about the primary literature. It is an article called Large Influence of Soil Moisture on Long-Term Terrestrial Carbon Uptake, and it was published on the journal Nature on January 23, 2019. First of all, we can talk about the abstract. This abstract can be also divided in two different parts. For the context, it is said that 25% of the CO2 is absorbed by the terrestrial biosphere. In addition to this, we know that the rate of land carbon uptake is still uncertain, and this uncertainty prevents an accurate climate projection for the future. For the experiment, we know that data from 4 Earth system models were used to analyze CO2 fluxes according to the soil moisture. In addition to this, we know that there is an increase in the trend of carbon uptake, resulting in the accelerated atmospheric CO2 growth, and it will not be sustained for long. For the main part of the article, we can say that there is a strong effect of soil moisture on net biome productivity. Because of this, there will be a sharp drop of photosynthesis once the ecosystem becomes water limited. In addition to this, during the seasons of hot weather, the drying trend in the soil moisture will shift ecosystems into arid conditions, which will reduce the influence of variability of soil moisture. In other words, this means that the soils will be less moisturized because of the dry weather. All of the models presented by the research have a degree of uncertainty, as the primary lecture says. This happens because they do not include important plant water stress processes that are related to plant hydraulics. The results of this study showed that the semi-arid regions that are bordering deserts, humid subtropical climates, and Mediterranean Europe will become water limited due to the dry weather. In addition to this, there will be an increased vegetation water use efficiency due to the carbon fertilization effects. Nevertheless, there will be an overall drying trend in the soil moisture as the planet shifts to more arid conditions. This figure shows a little bit of the results found by the study. For example, we know that from 1971 to 2000, there was a reduction in the mean terrestrial carbon sink that was caused by soil moisture. Certain regions like Central Europe, Brazil, India, and Northern Australia are known to be water-limited ecosystems and have been shown to be the main drivers of interannual terrestrial CO2 flux variability. In the future, for example, from the years 2056 to 2085, there will be negative impacts on the mean net biome production that will remain strong in the semi-arid and humid climates. Now that we have a better idea of both articles, we can describe the differences between both of them. First of all, we can talk about the conclusion that each article makes. The news story says that rather than absorbing more greenhouse gas emissions, plants and soil may start absorbing less, accelerating the rate of change, while the primary literature says that by qualifying the critical importance of soil-water variability for the terrestrial carbon cycle, our results highlight the necessity of implementing improved representations of vegetation response to water stress to better predict future climate. The overall idea is still the same, but the one presented by the news article seems way too simple. This relates to the fact that the article for the New York Times has a different audience than the article for the Nature Journal. Another difference can be the fact that the news story does not use any of the data or the graphs and maps provided by the study. And finally, we can talk about how the main focus of the study is soil moisture and its carbon uptake, while the news story talks about plants absorbing CO2. Finally, we can talk about the accuracy of the news story. In fact, the New York Times article keeps a general idea of the primary literature. Nevertheless, the facts stated by the primary literature are simplified because of the audience that the news story is directed to. This is directed to anyone that reads the New York Times, therefore it is simplified so everyone can understand the message. There is a lack of accuracy overall, but it's simplified for the audience. One more time, everyone can read this journal, so it has to be simplified for everyone to be able to understand the message. But there is a takeaway from the results provided by the study by not mentioning all of the data found.